week has returned. Words we love to hear around here in Shelby County. Alongside Andrew Simonson, I am Alec Etheridge, and welcome in to the Shelby County High School Football Show. Another season, the second edition, with the two of us here to bring you everything you need to know and get geared up for high school football action right here in Shelby County. And Andrew, we start the season with a bang. We've got a county matchup this week. We've got 11 total teams, 11 total games taking place this week between Thursday and Friday night. So before we jump in and we kind of give a little bit of a season preview for each of these teams and a breakdown of the games that we have ahead, what's the one thing that's kind of sticking out to you on paper going into this opening week of the high school football season?
I think it's the fact that we have so many teams that it seems like they could go and contend towards the top end of their classification. In the past few years, you've maybe had one or two that will go ahead and challenge for that, but reclassification has really brought us a really good slate of teams and some really evenly matched divisions for the most part, and just a lot of exciting opportunities. It feels like there's a lot of hope and excitement around the season this year. Of course, that's always the case in week one, but it feels like just overall there's a hint more optimism as these teams hit the field looking to make better on what they did last year.
Yeah, big goose egg, 0-0. That's the record right now for everybody. It's a clean slate, fresh start for each of these teams. So when you go into this week one matchup, a chance for you to really start the season off on a high note, non-region matchups, and a situation where a lot of these teams, like you said, some good region action coming later on down the road. And you look in 6A, all of our 6A teams now in the exact same region. So that's going to be a fun battle ahead. We know about Class 7A Region 3. So there's just so much excitement that we've got built up for this season. And only two teams not playing this week. The Helena Huskies going to have an open week this week, as are the Coosa Valley Rebels. So both of them off this week. We'll start their seasons a week later. But overall, we've got an exciting season ahead. I can't wait to see how everything's going to unfold this year. But as usual, we're going to have our SCR Stars of the Week back this year. That's going to start next Monday with our first segment of Stars from the opening week of the high school football season. Our live show is going to expand beyond just Facebook Live on Friday nights and Thursday night this week with a Thursday night game. We're going to have those live shows streamed for you on multiple platforms and a lot of other excitement that we're going to be bringing to you throughout the season. But before we jump in, let me tell you about one of our sponsors this year. We're going to have several sponsors that are helping us out this year, and that's our friends at Consign Design is going to be one of those. Wendy and her crew, they run a great local business that can get you anything you need in the consignment industry with new and gently used designer and name brand clothing. Voted Shelby Living's best consignment store 8 times. Consign Design is conveniently located in Alabaster at 72 Fulton Springs Road near Publix and Walmart Neighborhood Market. With more than 27 years of experience in the consignment industry, Consign Design owner and operator Wendy Davis knows a thing or two about friendly fashion. Men's, women's, kids, anything that you need, they're going to have it there for you. And they're known for a wide variety of jewelry. And as you're looking to get your game day wear this season, whether it be for high school football, whether it be for college football, Wendy and her crew, they're going to have something for you with earrings, outfits, anything that you could need going into your game day this year. So make sure you visit them. If you want to start consigning as well, very easy process to take in your stuff, set an appointment with them. Give them a call, 205-664-7540, 205-664-7540, and consign.design is their website. So make sure you visit them, give them a call this football season for all your game day needs, any accessories that you may need throughout this fall season. But Andrew, I want to jump into the football talk now. Obviously, we look at what we've got this year on paper, a lot of unknown. So when you look at that, what's the one team that you think has the highest expectation? I know Thompson's going to be up there as one of those teams and what they're looking to bounce back and do this year. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of teams that there's some question marks across the board. So you look at that, what's the one team that you think with those question marks is going to surprise a lot of people this year?
I think Montevallo is going to be that team that comes in and surprises people. There is so much enthusiasm around this program. Obviously, coming out of last season, lose a couple of players, namely your all-time sack leader in Charlie Adams and a star receiver in Javon Rogers. Blake Bourne goes to Prattville. as their AD. So on paper, you think that this team is going to be in a little bit of a rebuilding state going into Class 5A as well. But there is so much excitement around what Garrett Langer is bringing to this program. Jordan Ward stepping up at quarterback, and you got some really talented players coming back there in Rosario Conwell and Keyston Ross. I think this is going to be a team that, getting into a somewhat favorable region in Class 5A Region 3, I've always thought that I've been a little bit higher on Montevallo than most people, but I really do think that this year is going to be that year where they can get back to the postseason and make some noise.
Yeah, and I mean, a good chance for them in the region that they're going to be in. They do jump up to 5A, but they're going to have some opportunity there. A good chance this week 1 to pick up a season opening victory as well. But across the board this week, very exciting to say the least. It's the first week of the season, so your excitement's already there. But we've got a Thursday night matchup with Thompson hosting Grayson on ESPN2, a nationally televised game there. We've got Oak Mountain and Briarwood, our game of the week, right here at Herdmont Park as well. Great rivalry there. Briarwood actually closer to Herdmont than Oak Mountain High School is. So it's going to be a lot of fun when these two get together on Friday night in our game of the week. Both sides of the stadium going to be packed to the brim here. And a lot of other games to talk about in addition to that, 9 total games. So what we're going to do at the end of the show, make sure you stay tuned. We don't have our SCR Stars of the Week for this week's show, but we will have our big surprise of the year. What's going to be our bold prediction of the year. So make sure you stay tuned for that at the end of the show. But we're also going to give you a breakdown of each team, what you can expect from them this season as a whole, and then also a pick on each of their week 1 matchups to open up the 2024 high school football season. Sure to be a fun show, sure to be a fun season. So make sure you stay tuned and watch it all. We start off with a bang. The Thompson Warriors taking part in a big game this Thursday night to kick off their 2024 campaign, hosting Grayson in a game that's going to be nationally televised on ESPN2. So a lot of excitement building up around that game. But before we dive in, let me tell you about our sponsor this year for the Thompson segment, both during our tape and live show. That's going to be 3D Air Services. When you look at 3D Air Services, we begin to transition into fall, into these cooler months. You know, make sure to give our friend Jay Carr a call. You don't want to wait until you have an issue. You turn on that heat for the first time and it doesn't crank up. You got that burning smell that shows up. Go ahead and give our friend Jay Carr a call with 3D Air Services, 205-883-3899. They offer 24-hour emergency help. They have financing options, budget-friendly. But this is a group and his staff that's certified with 115 years of combined experience between them. And you look at air quality in your home, your place of business, such an important thing. And whether it's heating, air, water heater, generator, whatever it may be, Jay and his crew are going to get you taken care of. So make sure to give them a call, 3D Air Services, throughout this football season for anything you may need. This heat's going to probably last well into September, into October. So if your air condition starts to go bad, don't wait until next year. Get it fixed this year. And when that heat cranks up, make sure you're good to go. If you need any help, Jay Carr, 3D Air Services, 205-883-3899. And Andrew, I tell you a team who's looking to start hot this year and hope the heat's working, and that's the Thompson Warriors as they host Grayson in a big nationally televised game this Thursday night. You look at this Thompson team coming off a year which their state championship streak came to an end, a tough loss to Central Phoenix City in last year's Class 7A state championship, but a team in Thompson that's got a lot of talent back on the defensive side of the football, all across the board. And offensively, a couple of key positions they're looking to fill at wide receiver and up front on the offensive line. But they've got an All-American quarterback in Trent Seaborn back, and then Mike Dujon at running back. So the offense is going to have some talent there, but that wide receiver group and the offensive line got to be the two biggest question marks heading into the year.
Absolutely. You look at that receiving core and look what Trent Seaborn was able to do with them last year. So much success coming from Deuce Oliver, Colby Hearn, Colvin Landrew. All three of those guys are gone. Yep. Angel Jones is the only one of those four remaining from that state championship game team. And then you look up front, and Dylan Marquez is the only offensive lineman back at center. Four positions that need to be filled. Granted, they do get A.J. Williams coming in from Clay Chalkville, but that's still a lot of new players to the Thompson uniform coming in at that position. So it's going to be a bit of a different look for this team. Like you mentioned, the top end of these athletes, I would stack them up against just about anybody in the country, including Grayson. I think you're going to see that between Anquan Fagans, Trent Seaborn, Jared Smith, and a lot of these other people. But it's those holes that they need to fill. Just like any other high school team, not even dynasties are immune from having to fill up these holes. And this game is going to be a big test for those new pieces. Grayson is absolutely no slouch, a Class 6A semifinalist in Georgia that, albeit did have a rough stretch to begin this season, but still going to be a very tough test for this Warriors side, and one that I'm interested in seeing how they take that and use that to become a better team.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Grayson gets off to an 0-1 start last week to open the season as they start a week earlier over there in Georgia. Comes into this game, though, with a game under their belt. They've played one game, so that's got to give them a little bit of an edge to be able to have some film to work off of, but also an edge from the standpoint that they're going to be motivated. They don't want to start the season 0-2. So when you look at this matchup on paper, what sticks out as the difference maker to you? Who walks away with the victory?
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the back end of Thompson's defense that is really going to make the difference. If those linebackers and secondary players are able to step up alongside the players that we already know, like Anquan Fagans, like Peyton Lewis, like Trent McCorvey, everybody else in there, relatively new to their positions, and are going to be faced with some pretty high-end offensive players coming out of Grayson this year. Obviously, that offense didn't exactly get a good second half, as Grayson ended up blowing a 19-3 halftime lead to lose 20-19 in their week one game. But overall, both these teams are going to be coming in extremely motivated. Thompson has a chip on their shoulder from that state title game loss, and this is as motivated of a team as I've seen. I think it's going to be whoever uses that motivation to the most advantage and just comes out there and basically takes it, because we know that both teams have the athletes to be able to do so. At this point, I think Grayson is just a step ahead of where Thompson is right now, just in terms of their on-field experience for this season. Thompson maybe has a few too many unknowns going into this game, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that's going to be an incredible game out there on Thursday night. Going to be definitely a good one to tune in, whether you're at the stadium or watching on ESPN2, but ultimately a Grayson win in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you look at this matchup, I think Thompson's defense, early in the season, defense is kind of what gets you that edge. If you're fundamentally sound, well coached on defense, you're going to have a chance in that week one matchup, and tends to be a little bit ahead of where the offense is. I think that makes the difference in this one. Now, depth is something to watch out for Thompson's defense. Talented at the ones across the board. They're still building a little bit of depth going into the season, and so that'll be something to watch, is how that depth kind of grows in this week one matchup. But ultimately, what they have across the board, up front in the front seven, on the back end in that secondary, really, really talented group. And I think that defense is going to keep this a good game. And when you got an All-American quarterback on the other side of the ball and your defense is playing that well, going to tend to lead to a lot of wins. So I think ultimately that defense, the difference maker in this one. Going to be a great matchup. We'll be there live for you on Thursday night with our live pregame show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, possibly Twitter as well. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. We'll see you there from Warrior Stadium this Thursday night. That takes us to our game of the week right here on this field behind us, Herdmont Stadium, Herdmont Park here in North Shelby County, as the Oak Mountain Eagles going to host the Briarwood Lions in a great rivalry battle, 280 battle between two teams that are separated by just a couple miles right here on Highway 119. But before we jump in, I want to tell you about our sponsor for the Oak Mountain Eagles and their segment throughout the year, and that's going to be 3D Air Services. You're going to hear us mention them a lot this year, and that's because we trust their services and what they're doing. Give our friend Jay Carr a call if you're looking for any services heading into the winter months. We're getting to that cold fall time of year where you're going to have to crank that heat up for the first time. And if it's not working, or if it gives you a bad smell, you need to call Jay and get it checked out. Same for the air conditioner. Obviously, summer lingers here in Alabama, and that puts your air conditioner through a big test. And if you run into any issues late in the season, don't wait until next spring to get it fixed. Go ahead and get it taken care of now. Jay and his friends there at 3D Air Services going to come out, take care of you. Give them a call, 205-883-3899. 115 years of combined experience with their staff. They can help you with heating, air, water heater, generator, anything you need with your HVAC services. So make sure to give them a call, 205-883-3899. Be ready for the fall, be ready for the winter, and then be ready for next spring as well. So, Andrew, that takes us into our game of the week right here at Hermont Park. The Oak Mountain Eagles and Briarwood Lions, two teams that come into this season with some question marks. There's going to be a lot of things to replace on both teams. You got a little bit of stability at Oak Mountain, but coming off a 1-9 season, whereas Briarwood, they jumped down from 6A to 5A, which is a classification they've dominated in the past. The problem is they got a lot of players that they're having to replace from last year and from the last couple of years from an experience standpoint. So when you look at Oak Mountain, when you look at Briarwood, what are the two key pieces that you're looking for throughout this season from both of those teams?
So for Briarwood, I'm really looking forward to some growth in the passing game. You're going to have a new quarterback once again. Either Braden Robertson or Charles Deadman is going to take the field on Friday night. Lions still figuring out who it might be. We might end up seeing both of them at times on Friday night as they try to figure out who their man is going to be going into region play. But I think a lot of people come into this. You look at this Briarwood team, it may have gone 6-6, but that was in a difficult region and ended up only losing to Saraland in the second round, just a team that ended up going on and coming in with a play of a state championship.
Yeah, no big deal there.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, oh, you're dropping down to 5A. That must mean you're going to be favored for immediate success. As a top 10 ranking going into this season certainly shows, but you look a little bit deeper onto this team and it's just like a lot of other Briarwood teams. They got to reload a little bit, find some new players, particularly at quarterback, get some receivers to step up, as well as get some defensive holes filled as well. But I think this Briarwood team is looking for an extra dimension in that pass game. I don't think it's going to be something that Forrester is going to be too worried about. It's a team that likes to dictate the tempo on the ground, and you've certainly got a good guy to do that in Luke Reynolds, while also keeping a really strong defense. But I think in order for Briarwood to take that next step, they're going to need some receivers, they're going to need a quarterback, something that they arguably haven't had since Christopher Vizina left for Clemson. So I think if they're able to grow in that as the season goes on, you'll start seeing some success from them within a very favorable 5A region, as well as deep into the playoffs, and that is the hope for the Lions.
When you look at Oak Mountain and what they've got too, so Briarwood's going to be a team where they're going to have a lot of guys stepping. They've been in the system for a long time. Those guys are going to step in, fill those roles like they do every year, and they're going to be veterans, juniors, seniors that are in those positions for the most part. Oak Mountain's got some senior leaders. They've got some experience. Will Odell back at quarterback. But this is a team that's looking to still build some confidence in those players at the same time after a little bit of struggle last year in a 1-9 record in that daunting Class 7A Region 3. So how do they get off to a good start, and what's their outlook like for the year?
I think it's just continuing to build off of what you had last year. It was a very young team last year, and it's going to be a very young team this year. Just a very small group of seniors, albeit they're going to be very big names like Will Odell and some of those other players on the defense and on the offense as well. They're going to be stepping up and leading this team as well. Still got some questions over at receiver. It's looking like the number one guy is going to be Sean Ray for them, a guy who was over in the secondary last year. Really high-end player, in my opinion, who's going to help them out a lot. And I really like the defensive line up there as well with Nico Varvudis and Caleb Jaworski as well. But I think for them, it's really going to come down to that line. It's a line that really doesn't have a lot of experience up front for them on offense. And to me, that's going to be extremely crucial for them because Marty Myricks is a quality back in that backfield for them. But overall, it's just really getting used to a lot of the way that this team wants to play. It was a team that's still kind of searching for their identity last year, put in new systems over the offseason, get a new offensive coordinator in Gerard Holder, and kind of tweak some things and make it better for the personnel, as McComb wants to say. And I got to see this team a little bit in its Eagle Day scrimmage. I don't get to see many of these teams with how busy this job ends up getting, but I think the passing game really looked sharp and on a step above what I saw in some of their games last year, like against this very matchup where Briarwood won 21-0 and the Oak Mountain offense really didn't have that much to offer. So I think if they're able to continue building off that, take a few steps this year, maybe get a little bit closer to contention, we could see some of these games like this go from 3-score games into 2-1-score games.
Okay, so building off of that, what do you think happens in this one then on Friday night?
I think ultimately Briarwood's going to dictate this up front. I think ultimately Luke Reynolds is going to be the difference maker on either side. I think if he's able to establish the run game on there and then take away some options from Will Odell as he moves back into the secondary at defensive back where he was as a sophomore versus a linebacker last year, I think that clears the way for up front players like Garrett Witherington to dominate that line of scrimmage, maybe take advantage of some players who are a little more green off experience-wise up on that offensive line, start getting to the quarterback, start blowing up some plays in the backfield for the running game. I think it's going to be closer than last year, though. I think we're definitely going to see it be a lot more closer of a game, but I still think it's going to be dictated off the defenses, and that makes me always lean Briarwood, because why doubt their defense when it's been so good to them?
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think the Briarwood defensive front in particular is what makes the difference in this game. I do think Will Odell is going to have a good year. I do think they need to use him as much as they can in different facets, running the football with his size and physicality, and the big arm that he has because of his size as well. So they need to be able to do some different things with him. But early in the season, when you've got a defensive front like Briarwood that you're facing, you're going to have some weapons to get the ball to quickly. And while Oak Mountain may have that, and that may be a key part of their offense moving forward this season, we need to see it. We need to see it. It's game one, coming off a 1-9 season where the pass game wasn't really able to ever get going last year. I do think they have some more weapons this year, and I think you're going to start to see that progress in this game, but it's going to take a couple of games as they head toward region play to fully get there. I think you're going to see flashes of it in this one, and like you said, I think it's going to be a really close game this time around and not a blowout like we saw last year. So I think you're going to see a tight one here going into the fourth quarter, and it may come down to Will Odell there in that fourth quarter being able to make a big play, and he'll have that opportunity to lead the Eagles to the win. But ultimately, that defensive front of Briarwood, I think, makes the difference in this big matchup that we've got for you on Friday night. Our game of the week, first one of the year, sure to be a lot of fun here between these 280 rivals. A lot to talk about with the Spain Park Jaguars as we jump into their game one prediction here against Sparkman. Going to host the Sparkman Senators to kick off the season. The Jags jumped down to 6A this year, moving from the 7A classification and the daunting 7A Region 3, which we've already mentioned. Now they jump into a difficult 6A classification and region, but a team in Spain Park that looks to be a contender, not only for a region championship, but a possible state championship there in Class 6A as well. But before we dive in and talk about the Jags, I want to talk about Scooters Coffee. Scooters got two locations on Highway 280, one in Chelsea, one there in Inverness. All you Spain Park fans, if you're looking for your fall fix, make sure you get to Scooters. Like I mentioned, those two locations that they've got there in Inverness next to Chipotle and Home Depot, in Chelsea, they've got it right next to the Buffalo Wild Wings. So make sure you stop by this fall. They've got that new fall menu out, and we all know it's never too soon for pumpkin spice, right? So make sure you get to Scooters this fall. They've got their delicious menu out: pumpkin spice latte, maple bourbon latte, pumpkin chai, which is my personal favorite. Love that. Also the autumn caramel crunch. And don't forget about all of their coffee blenders, their smoothies, their teas, all kinds of things to get you fixed up, and a great food menu as well that includes things like pumpkin cheesecake bites, breakfast burritos, omelet bites, baked goods, much, much more there on the Scooters menu. So make sure you check them out. Regular menu, great. Fall menu, great, exceptional. So make sure you stop by Scooters there in Inverness or in Chelsea throughout this high school football season. They're going to get you some good stuff there at Scooters Coffee. And Spain Park hoping to come out energized on some caffeine there in that opener against Sparkman Friday night. And Andrew, our first look at the Jags, Tim Bakakis and his group, so close last year. My bold prediction a year ago, which we're still going to give you at the end of the show, was Spain Park making the playoffs and competing throughout the season. So close. Just missed it. And it was ultimately that Hoover game early in the season. Injuries in that matchup cost them that game, and ultimately a spot in the playoffs at the end of the year. But now, Andrew, we get a Spain Park team that looks to be a favorite in this new region they're in this year. And they open up with a Sparkman team, oddly enough, that's in 7A, a team that showed some promise early last year, struggled down the stretch a season ago. You got to feel like Spain Park, with everything they have back, Brock Bradley, you look at the defense and some of the things they have should be pretty good as well. But ultimately, the backfield with Brock Bradley, those running backs that we're going to talk about, got to feel pretty good about Spain Park's chances in this matchup and throughout the season.
Absolutely. And you look at this team dropping down to 6A, I think they were somebody that everybody, including us, immediately tabbed and said, this is going to be a team that competes up at the high end of Class 6A. Now I will say the difference between 7A and 6A these days, especially at the top
Not
end,
as much as it used to be.
it's razor thin, but I still really like the Spain Park team going into a very challenging region, and they'll get a good sense of preparation here against Sparkman, a team that's coming off of losing its last 5 games in a row after an easier start to the season where they were able to get some wins off of some lighter competition, break the top 10 up in there. But I think it really comes down to this offense for this team. Defense, great as well. Some returners like Aiden Walker, Christian Smith, and Arnold Bush. A little more holes to fill over there, but it's going to be this offense that's really going to dictate the tone going forward. And Brock Bradley is looking as strong as ever at quarterback. Really sharp. We'll have to deal with a little bit of some new receivers after Jonathan Bibbs and Reggie Jackson are gone now. And then, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think this running back duo, you look at what they were able to do last year with Dakari Shanks and Derek Shanks. Derek Shanks is gone. Dakari is still here, but CJ Cowley, you want to talk about somebody who caught everybody's eye early on. How about taking your first carry of the spring game against Ramsey straight to the house from deep in your own territory? That is one way to really start gearing up the hype for this kid going forward. And I think he's going to be a key part of this attack. Ultimately, I do really think that the offense is going to set the tone here, really make some good things happen for the Spain Park team and get some momentum going into what's going to be a really difficult next month. You got Hoover, Helena, and Benjamin Russell mixed with your bye week in there as well. This is where it starts getting going for the Spain Park Jags.
If Spain Park can get off to a 4-0 start, I mean, not only a region championship contender, they probably are going to win it at that point, but a state championship contender in Class 6A. And CJ Cowley, a guy they've been hyping up for a couple of years now. You've got those guys to take pressure off of Bradley because he's going to need some receivers to step up, like you mentioned, missing a lot of that talent that he had last year. And then obviously offensive line going to be key as well. If you've got a solid offensive line and you have 1 or 2 receivers step up, this offense may be one of the best in the state this year. Defense going to have some replacements to do to make up front and across the board, but I do think they're going to be really talented. That was Tim Bukakis's number 1 priority, get this defense back to playing Spain Park football, and they did that last year. I think they've turned the page there. So you pair those 2 things together, I think you're going to see Spain Park jump out with a big win here against Sparkman, and I think it sets the stage for what's going to be a really big season the rest of the way for the Jags. So we'll see what they're able to accomplish throughout the year. Game 1 against Sparkman this Friday night. Expect Spain Park to walk away with a win and expect big things from the Jags in general throughout this season. Another one of our mini teams that's moving down a classification, that's going to be the Chelsea Hornets, also joining the Spain Park Jaguars in 6A, the same region as well. So that's going to be fun to watch later this year, a fun little 280 area rivalry we're going to get between those 2 teams. And Chelsea, the last couple of years in Class 7A Region 3, they face some of the best in the state. Now they come back down to 6A, and it's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do. And I think this is the perfect game to start with. You look at this Mobile Christian team, a team that was 3A previously, really good 3A football team. Now it's a team that's jumped up to the 4A classification, going to have some bigger challenges. So it's a good challenge for them, but also a good challenge for Chelsea because a 3A state championship team from last year is a team that can really challenge you out of the gate. And when you look at some of the key pieces that Chelsea's having to replace this year, that's going to be, I think, the perfect start for them against a really good team, while not as big size-wise, to start with a team that's well-coached and well-prepared for every matchup throughout the season.
Definitely, and I agree with you on all of that. Obviously, Chelsea does have some holes that they need to fill, starting at quarterback with Miller Bowman coming in midway through the spring, Emerson Russell graduating. Now you have Chase Strasner and Morgan Barnes stepping up. But overall, it just really feels like there's a lot of optimism around this Chelsea team. You feel like over the last couple of years, they were kind of waiting for this moment, getting back down to 6A, where they really thought that they were going to be able to compete and go forward long term. That's not to say that the move up to 7A wasn't entirely bad. We saw a lot of success in other sports, and I feel like overall, the move is going to bring a lot of really good big-time experience against those teams like Thompson, Hoover, Hewitt, Trustville. They weren't able to face previously. Now you have that experience off of a team that was kind of young last year. You get those players stepping into some bigger roles this season, and I think it's going to unlock a whole new thing for them. This is still going to be a team that needs to figure itself out along the way and is going to be tested by Mobile Christian. Losing a couple defensive stars off of Mobile Christian from last season's undefeated state title team. They'll have a new coach. Their quarterback is back, so there's some continuity over there. But you look back at Chelsea, and I think it's going to be the defense that sets the tone throughout the season. There is a lot of excitement about what this team can do on that end. You've got leaders like Ethan Prickett and Romello Cooper there. Some promising stars coming up like Porter Schott, Kenny Wesley, and Grant Evans back there in the secondary. And overall, there's a lot of athletes on this team and a lot of really high ceiling players that I think are going to be wanting to get after the ball and really make some havoc and make some things happen for this team that has kind of needed some momentum going forward, just something that they can build off of. And I think that this game is going to be where it starts. I think a lot of that experience is going to start showing in this game, picking Chelsea to win here, and then hopefully they're able to use that to build off of going forward.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. I think it could go either way. And it's one that Chelsea's really going to have to come out prepared for. With a lot of new faces on the offensive side of the football, they're going to have to score some points early in the season. And you look at that defense. That's where I agree with you. I think the defense being fundamentally sound and ready for this first game of the year is going to be what makes the difference. Like you said, some stars that aren't there for Mobile Christian this year, some changes happening. I think ultimately Chelsea's going to be ready to roll in this one. I think they're rejuvenated down in 6A now. I think also they're going to start the season 1-0, which is going to go a long way because I think this is a team that can compete for a playoff spot. Getting a win in week 1 is something that can give you that confidence early in the season. You look at teams like Helena, Spain Park, Pelham, Calera, Benjamin Russell, all these teams that are going to be battling. Chelsea's on a level playing field with most of those teams. They're going to compete in every game, but you can't start 0-1 in a game like this and have the momentum that you need. So head coach Todd Cassidy, his group, I think going to come out determined, looking to build some confidence. I think it's going to bode well. Chelsea Hornets, I think, start the season 1-0. The Pelham Panthers are going to hit the road to open the 2024 season. They head up to Pell City, what's going to be an exciting matchup. And before we jump in to talk about that one, let me tell you about our friends again at 3D Air Services. We're going to sponsor the Pelham segment throughout this season. And we've talked about it a little bit throughout the show, but Jay Carr and his group of certified HVAC experts going to take care of you no matter what you need when it comes to heating, air, generators, water heaters, whatever it may be. They're going to get you situated, especially as we transition from hot to cold, probably back to hot and then back to cold again. You want to make sure that your air's tuned up, that your heat is ready to roll for the cold months ahead. So make sure that you trust our guys at 3D Air Services. 24-hour emergency help, financing options available, affordable HVAC services that they're going to provide you with their leadership staff that's got 115 years of combined experiences. 205-883-3899, 205-883-3899. Our friends at 3D Air Services, they're going to be there to help you throughout the high school football season. And you look at Pelham, Andrew, a road trip to start the season, and this is a team that's going to have a lot of holes to fill this year. I mean, talent across the board. They're going to be athletic. They're going to be talented. But ultimately, the Pelham Panthers replacing their star quarterback in Clayton Maines, a lot of other pieces that they're going to be replacing as well on both sides of the ball. So when you look at that, but you look at the athletic talent they have, what are the expectations for Pelham, especially going into a game against a Pell City team that's lost their coach, faced some turmoil in the offseason, and struggled last year as well?
Yeah, and I think last season we can maybe agree we maybe expected a little bit too much out of this team. A lot of things that needed to come together for this Pelham team throughout the season, some things that they were dealing with that forced a lot of young players to step up. But I think this right here is where it's going to start coming together. I still think it's going to be a bit of a transitional year, very young overall, but you look at some players who were able to get in there early on last year, like Marcus Arnold and Tristan Darden, Jacob Gibbs coming back there as well. Those are all receivers, and those will be a lot of help for whoever this quarterback ends up being. Either Dylan Smith, who we saw finish out the year last year, finish out that senior night and then go into Spain Park for that final game of the season, or Logan Strunk. One of those two will end up getting that spot. But I think really the backfield is going to be interesting here. Caleb Porter is going to be definitely leaned on heavily, stepping up into his senior year. Obviously, no Mike Grayson to play behind, but this is a guy who's really started to put some things together and become a really good part of our Pelham's run game. You look back at our football magazine, you see he was trained by none other than Jordan Washington himself, his cousin over at Helena. You got to learn from the best to be the best.
Player of the year. That's not a bad little person to learn from.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be really key, is just how he dictates the run for them, while the passing game kind of figures some stuff out. I see a lot of talent and a lot of potential on this team. They just need to start putting it together over there. And then you look at the defense, some pretty good players over there as well, but just 3 seniors overall on that unit. Just a lot of players that are going to need to come up and just start performing really well. But I think that if they're able to do it here against the Pell City team that struggled last year, went 1-9, Rush Probst is gone from them, and they've got a new coach over there as well.
1-9 with making my asterisk sign, one of those being a forfeit because
2-8 was actually their record. But bottom line is this is a really good opportunity. While Pelham has to go on the road, I do really like them here, and I think that they can figure some things out here ahead of a big rivalry game against Oak Mountain. I like the Panthers in this one.
Yeah, this is a toss-up. I think either one could walk away with the win. End of the day, I mean, you look at it, Pelham, I think, has the talent. I know that Pell City's got some size. They've been working hard in the offseason. Faced a little bit of turmoil, obviously, with Probst being let go or resigning, whatever you want to call it, and all the stuff that happened with Pell City. And they've got a good coach in, a former Alabama football player. And, you know, it's just, you don't know what to expect from either of these teams. A lot of key question marks, and that's the fun of week one. But I'll go with the Panthers simply because I like what Vickery's doing, and I like the athletes that they have. I think they're a really athletic group that's going to be well coached. I think it's going to be a very, very good football game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way at the end of the night. So if you get the chance to make the road trip up to Pell City as a Pelham fan, you're going to be treated to a good one. You win this one, you feel good about what's ahead. You look at this region, like I said a few minutes ago, Spain Park, Kalina, Ben Russell, Chelsea, Calera, Chilton County. Pelham's got a chance, I think, to battle Chelsea for that 4th spot. Maybe can slide into battling Helena and Benjamin Russell for that 2-3-4 spot as well. So it's going to be an interesting region. And I think Pelham's right there on the cusp. Winning this game on the road to start the season is going to go a long way if the Panthers can pick it up. So we'll see how they fare on the road at Pell City in a big matchup here. The Calera Eagles going to be under a new head coach this year. Scott Riles comes in the offseason, taking over a Calera program that's looking to get back on track after an 0-10 season last year. And this is a guy that has a lot of coaching experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about their matchup here in week one as well against Northridge, which is going to be a great 6A battle between those two teams. Before we talk about that, we've got to talk about Bertoloni's. You can't think Calera without stopping at Bertoloni's, one of the best Italian restaurants around, definitely in Shelby County, and what they're able to offer. Obviously, you know, we get closer to fall, winter, nothing hits home more than a good Italian meal that's going to warm your heart. You look at what Sonia Bertoloni has done with her amazing staff there at Bertoloni's. It's a place that's won best pizza, best date night, best upscale restaurant, so many things that they can offer you there at Bertoloni's. So, you know, go dine in, you get the warm ambiance there. You can order online through Grubhub, through DoorDash, whatever you need to do to get your food. They've got the family meals. They've got the traditional Italian dishes. You look at chicken parm, you look at lasagna, spaghetti, all that great stuff. The pizzas, though, man, the pizzas are so good. Their subs are great. Personal favorite of mine, Nashville hot chicken pizza, buffalo chicken pizza. Love anything with chicken and hot sauce on it. So those are right up my alley. You don't want to miss that. They've got a full bar with craft cocktails, great wine selection, and so much more. So don't forget to visit Bertoloni's throughout this high school football season. And you can't forget about the cake. The strawberry cake, divine. It's what they're known for. Just incredible there. And they've got seasonal options of their cake. You can get it by the slice. You can get it whole. So many different flavors to choose from. So find out why Bertoloni's has 4.5 out of 5 stars with nearly 2,000 reviews. One of the best places you can visit. 205-664-8780 or Bertolonis.com. 205-664-8780 or Bertolonis.com. And Calera, just a staple when you think about it, is Bertoloni's. They're hoping that the football team can live up to that success that Bertoloni's has had for such a long-standing period of time. And Scott Riles feels like the guy to get that done. A guy that's had a long-standing career, 185 and 111 overall with his record. Andrew stops at Elba, Satsuma, Laverne, Baldwin County. Started back in 1998 in the AISA. So, Andrew, my question for you after going through that list of stuff, How does he transition? We saw what Jason Hamlin was able to do to build Calera back toward some positive stuff, but now coming off an 0-10 team, a team that hasn't been able to sustain that success yet at the 6A level, how does Scott Riles come in and get this Calera team to be a team that can compete for a playoff spot?
I think the past 3 years have shown that Calera is really one good coach away from being able to put some success together and make some things happen. And I think Riles is the man to do that. You talk to these players and they're really motivated to go out and work for this guy. I think he's really unified this team and started to identify some ways where they can start using the things that they do really well in order to find some success on the field. And you and I both know that that's speed and athleticism. Yep. That is going to be what this team is dictated by. Once again this year, Katie Young, as well as their secondary, both the receivers and the defensive backs will be what the bread and butter of this team is as well. And taking advantage of all those receivers will be A.J. Johnson, somebody who I thought had a lot of potential last year. I got to see Calera a little bit during that 0-10 season, and frankly, there weren't many positive spins to put on a winless season, but I did see some flashes of what he was able to do and what this offense as a whole was able to do. And I think he's got a lot of potential as a starter. Been looking pretty crisp in some videos I've seen of 7-on-7 and the various workouts they've been able to do. I think this Calera team could surprise some people and win a few games that they might not necessarily expect them to. And I think this Northridge game is a pretty good opportunity for them. You look at Northridge, went 3-7 last year. Kind of had some similar weaknesses to Calera as well. Obviously, Calera does have a lot of work ahead of them. County worsts for them in both offensive and defensive points per game. But I think this team, you're going to go look at them at week 1, and I expect them to take a big step compared to where they were last year.
So is it one of those games that you think Calera can win that you maybe they're not supposed to win?
I think that they could win this. I do think that's really going to come down to this defense. I think that at the end of the day, this team is going to be balancing on a razor's edge when it comes to scoring points and then allowing points. I think the lack of size in this defense is going to hurt this team at times. I don't think this Northridge game is going to be one of them, though. It's a Northridge team that struggled against some other teams. You see a loss from them to Oak Mountain last year. Only 3 wins overall in, quite frankly, a favorable region, including the west end of Birmingham and that Tuscaloosa area. I just think that this game is going to be one that Calera, it might be a little bit of a battle, but I think Calera, you lean on them and could possibly get that first win in quite some time for them. And then it's all about what you do from there. Can you build that and use that to find some success and maybe sneak in a few wins in region play? Who knows?
Yeah, I think the big thing in this one is I need to see it. I need to see Calera win a football game again. To have that faith in them moving forward. And so in game 1, I got to go with Northridge in this one just from that standpoint. They were able to put some wins together last year. Their final 2 games, they pick up a win in, which was good for their momentum moving forward. And so for Calera, I just need to see it early in the season. I do think they have the athletes there this year. I think they've got the talent to have a little bit of success and grow toward the future. But we got to see it in week 1. If those athletes come out and they've got the speed, and that's what can be key. The last time they had speed like this, probably back to Kobe Prentice, who you're probably going to see making big plays for Alabama this fall, and what he can do with the football. And I see a lot of guys like that on this year's roster. It's just a matter of getting them the ball in space and then having the blocking downfield that's going to be able to make a difference. But you also got to have time to get it to them in space. And I think that's going to be what we need to see early in the season is how does that offensive line help open things up for those guys to make some big-time plays. So some opportunities ahead for Calera. I think they're going to keep this a pretty close game against Northridge, 2 teams that need a win. And the winner, like you said, it builds momentum toward the rest of the season and a chance to compete for a playoff spot in both of their regions, too. You never know what's going to happen this year and what I think are some competitive regions there in Class 6A. So a big opportunity on their home field for the Calera Eagles to open the 2024 season. A new classification for the Montevallo Bulldogs. We continue the trend with our teams jumping a classification. The Montevallo Bulldogs jumping from 4A up to 5A. Hard to believe. It does not feel like they are a 5A football team or program or school, I should say. But they're in the 5A classification regardless. Same as Shelby County, same as Briarwood now. And with that, also a coaching change with Garrett Langer taking over for Blake Boren in the offseason, an assistant promoted to that head coaching job. This is a Montevallo team that finished 7-3 last year, missed the playoffs. A team that's been right on the cusp, right around that record several years in a row now. And they're loaded with athletes. They got Rosario Conwell back. They got Keeson Ross back. They got D. Cuts back. These are all big combos that can play on both sides of the football. They're going to make a difference for you. Now they get an opening matchup with a Tarrant team, 3A team last year, in the same boat as Montevallo. They're jumping up a classification to 4A, but they finished 3-7 in 3A, and now you're facing a 5A Montevallo team. So with the athletes that Montevallo has back, I mean, this one seems like one of the more straightforward games that we've looked at so far in week one.
Yeah, it really does. I do think that Tarrant's putting something good together over there. City government may be a best, but I think this Tarrant football team is doing pretty well overall. But you just look at this team, and these teams finished out the season last year. I was there for that Montevallo Tarrant game last year, and they're going to be back doing the same thing for the opener here at Theron Fisher Stadium come Friday night. And what a difference that those two matchups have made. You look at Langer coming in as head coach, and just a lot of changes across the board for Montevallo. But I think that just the bottom line for this team is I think they got a lot of athletes, and I think that they've got a lot of potential for success going into this year. I think a lot of that success is going to come off of the run game with Rosario Conwell, with a solid offensive lineup in front of him too. I do really think that that's going to make a big difference for them as well. And some defensive players as well. You lose a couple key stars, but you bring back Nylan Hillgood, Keyston Ross, Brandon Hudson. And for me, what I'm most excited about, though, is that pass game. D-Cuts has been hyping up Jordan Ward throughout the offseason. Feels like those two have a pretty good connection going on. I'm curious to see it out on the field and how it extends to the rest of the receiving core going forward as well. I think the momentum's really in Montevallo's favor, and I think that's going to be what propels them to a victory.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, not only do I think they win this game, you're going to see a Montevallo team jumping up to 5A that could immediately compete for home field advantage in the playoffs as one of those top two seeds. This is a region, and we'll talk a little bit more about them with Shelby County here in just a minute, but it's a region in which, you know, Demopolis is kind of that head honcho, probably going to win the region championship. Beyond that, it's up in the air. It's anybody's game for those final three spots. Montevallo going to have some big opportunities, and with what you say, and with what you said, and pointing out those players with the stars that they have back, this is a team that should win this game. Also, should go on to have a chance not only to make the playoffs, but I think finish highly in this region if those athletes end up playing to their level of capability. So it's going to be fun to watch the Montevallo Bulldogs throughout the year in a fun region as well. So we'll see how it all unfolds for them this season, but expect a week one win against Tarrant, a chance to start the season on the right foot and really cement that momentum for what's going to be an exciting stretch of region play. Well, Andrew, the Shelby County Wildcats, they've made it to the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 years, but they haven't had a winning season since 2020. You look at this team, and the writing's on the wall this year. We just talked about it with Montevallo. This region that they're going to be in this year, they've got some opportunity ahead. A region that, you know, last year they finished with just 2 wins, 2-9, but make the playoffs in that span. Well, the 2 wins they had last year, Jemison and Selma, both in this region. 3 4A teams that finished right around the 500 mark last year in this region, and then Demopolis, who I think, you know, I'm predicting is going to win. I'd go ahead and crown them the region champions. You never know what's going to happen, but they're right now the front runners. Beyond that, we just talked about it with Montevallo. The chances there for any of the rest of those teams to have an opportunity. The Wildcats start with a road trip to Lincoln. You look at this matchup in particular, are they going to get the momentum they need? And then you look at the season as a whole. Is this a team that's going to compete for one of those top 2-3 spots in this region?
So I think last year for this team, it really just came down to, and in the region in general, is who wants it. I remember just going back through the final few weeks of region play between them, Marbury, and Selma, these teams all huddling around that 2-win mark, and nobody separated themselves. People just kept losing, including Shelby County, losing those non-region games that they needed to win that could catapult them to a 3 seed. Shelby County gets in there in the playoffs with a 2-8 record, 2-9 after the loss to Eufaula. It's a pretty rare occasion for a 2-win team to make the playoffs. Yep. In fact, shout out to David Parker over at the Historical Society for giving me this one. Them and Marbury were the first 2-8 teams to make the playoffs since Hackleburg and Russell County in 2001. Wow. That is a very long time to go without having... I was
not prepared for that either. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
natural reaction there. That's insane.
Yeah, but you can just see that, though, with a lot of those teams coming back into this region this year, the opportunity is there. And I feel like there's a sense of urgency around the Shelby County team. They've really approached the offseason, and taken no prisoners. They've got a quarterback battle now after Ryan Sipes started the last 2 years. It's going to be him or Presley Duke going in there as well. Using his phrasing, cut off a little bit of dead weight from the team as well. Lost some seniors, though, like Bradley Horton, who would play a big key role in this team. So it's a little bit of a smaller group overall, but the hope internally is that it's going to generate some momentum and a tighter team culture, and they're going to need it going into this game. A Lincoln team that somewhat winnable. Lincoln only scored 18.7 points per game last year, but Shelby County also had a rough offense last year, only 15.6 as well. I think there was a lot of question marks within this game, and the biggest question is, are those changes going to lead to success on the field? And this team's just going to have to prove it out there.
Yeah, and this is a Lincoln team, 4-6 last year. This should be a pretty good battle. If Shelby County's taken the steps forward, they should compete in this game, should have a chance to win this football game. You mentioned Ryan Sipes at quarterback, a guy that if he wins that battle, they're testing him a little bit with some competition this year. If he steps up and wins that battle, it's because he's a leader. It means he's a leader of that unit, but of the team as well. Dominique Woods at receiver, Cooper Pennington and Eli Holloman as well. Both those guys on the defensive side are going to be big-time playmakers. Both of them could be collegiate-level players at one point. I mean, these are two talented players on the defensive side. So you've got a couple leaders offensively, you got a couple leaders defensively. Now it just turns into, how do we transition, get everybody to buy in as a team, and really just go into the season and you look at the schedule and you say, this is our opportunity. This is a year where we can really take strides forward as a program, and that starts in a game like Lincoln on the road. You may not win this game, but at least show that step and that progress forward. Ultimately, it's a Shelby County team that I need to see that improvement from early in the season to be able to have that faith, kind of like we've talked about with Calera. So I think Lincoln's going to walk away with the win. That's my prediction going into the matchup, but would not be surprised either way, especially if those players we just talked about step up in leadership roles and have the rest of the team surround them and buy into a full effort there. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see what Shelby County is going to be capable of this year. That's really what my takeaway is going to be, is what is the potential of this team. Win or loss, you can see a lot of potential even in a loss. And if they do win, automatically you see that potential. So I'm just excited to see the potential that they can have as Ellison's really kind of built this program, and now he's been there long enough that this should be a year where they kind of take that step forward. And I think that's what we're going to see. Whether it happens in week one is to be determined, but I do think you're going to see those progressive steps as this team battles and ultimately, I think, makes the playoffs as one of those top 4 seeds in the region. Been a historic 2-year stretch for the Vincent Yellow Jackets, back-to-back playoff appearances, so they've got a playoff streak going. 2 years ago, they win 10 games in a season for the first time in school history. So you look at that. This is a Vincent team that's been on the rise. They've been, head coach Lucas Weatherford's gotten them into good shape. And it's a team that has expectations. They've got players back. They've got their quarterback back in Casey Fields. They've got Phoenix Maxwell, Grayson Gould, Aiden Poe, Landon Archer. They got so many different players that can make a big-time difference this year. And all I'll say is they better start with a win, because with that talent back, taking on a Winterboro team, that they beat 29-0 last year, and a Winterboro team that was 1A, I think now 2A, if I remember correctly. But I know they're at least 1A last year, and may still be, according to Andrew, still in 1A. So you look at that, and this is a game that they should win. If they don't, then you look at the rest of that schedule, and man, we thought their region was tough last year. It looks even tougher this year. So you look at that, Andrew, and I mean, I think out of the teams in their region, only one team did not make the playoffs last year, and only 4 from each region make it. And so that's a crazy thing to think about, is that this is a deep, deep region. And for Vincent, even with those players back, that's going to be a lot to ask of those players. So when you look at this Vincent team and you look at this matchup against Winterboro, I think we both think they're going to win this game. But ultimately, beyond this game, what's the big key for Vincent if they want to be able to compete for a playoff spot again?
I think it's just going to be stay healthy. I think that's the one thing that really tripped this team up last year, and killed a lot of their momentum was suffering some of those injuries, having a little bit of fluidity throughout the season, and ultimately just sapped a lot of their energy. A lot of games where this team just was not able to show up and get across the line. Still making it to the playoffs with a 500 record, though. Overall,
region too.
Yeah, and in the past, that would have been seen as an extraordinary success. But credit to Weatherford, that's now just the standard, is getting into the playoffs. It's now what you do going from there. And I think this team has tons of potential to go from there and really do something in even a tough region. I think this team is looking at themselves as one of the top teams within that region, even though you look at some of those teams like Tuscaloosa Academy and Solligent, and those are going to be some big tests. But this Winterboro game is really just a start for them. Just start getting some momentum. Just start letting the pass game start clicking a little bit. They've got some good receivers out there with Aiden Poe, Tay Roberts, and Phoenix Maxwell that I think are going to do Casey Fields a world of good, especially with the confidence that he has now in him. Kind of out of Blake Allen's shadow now and really starting to grow as a player. And then you look at the defense, Grayson Gold, an all-state player coming back there for them, and those exact same receivers that we talked about and their skill all the way over in the secondary as well. And they're just about as skilled there as well. You saw Aiden Poe put up some incredible numbers out there in the secondary as well last year. It's a team with a lot of strengths, and I'm high on them for sure.
And I think what you just said, it's all-state player back. They've got players on both sides of the ball back. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are two-way players. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately in 2A, when you've got returning talent, that makes all the difference in the world. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everybody on their schedule has that same kind of talent back. I do think that most of them have kind of had that sustained success that you look for. Week 2 against BB Comer, going to be a huge test. That's a team that's probably going to go on to be a really good football team this year, and it's a non-region matchup this year. But ultimately, when you're in a region that basically every team was in the playoffs last year, that experience is something that's going to be huge for you moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think, obviously, Winterboro week 1, you get them kind of used to it again, back in the rhythm of things. Week 2 against BB Comer, that's where you get that determining factor of, is this team going to be a team that can get to that next level this year? Last year, they were right on the cusp. I ultimately don't think, and I'm not going to put words in Coach Weatherford's mouth, but ultimately, last year's team was a team that could have gotten a little bit further. I think they had that potential, and this year with a lot of those same guys back that have that talent, I think they have that hunger too. I think they want to get to that next level, and I think ultimately that's the difference for Vincent this year in the grand scheme of things. Week 1, win, they're going to beat Winterboro. Week 2 and on, it's going to be where it gets really, really interesting. If you're a Vincent player, don't listen to that. Week 1's all that matters right now. But moving forward, this is going to be a Vincent team that week by week is going to have to take it week by week, and we'll see how they handle it. But I have some high expectations. I had high expectations the last couple of years, and they've been in the playoffs back-to-back years. Let's see if they can make it 3 years in a row, which will be remarkable for Weatherford, for those players, and a testament to what they're trying to build there at Vincent. Well, as we close down the show, we make it to the AISA and the ACSC. We got Coosa Valley, like we mentioned at the top of the show. They're off this week. Evangel, they're going to be taking on Abbeville at home at Leary Simmons Stadium in this opener, home opener. And then Cornerstone going to be on the road at Lighthouse. So Cornerstone week 1, Evangel, it's their second game of the season. They've started 1-0. We expect big things from them. Cornerstone, the defending state champion, a lot of talent back. We expect big things from them. So, Andrew, these 2 games, break them down, and the expectations for both these teams real quick for the season ahead as both look to win state championships.
Yeah, starting with Evangel, I got a chance to watch their 38-19 win over North Carolina's Arundel Parrott up there in that Gatlinburg Black Bear Brawl, picking up a win in there for the 2nd straight season. And this is a team that's definitely clicking. Obviously, 8-man game on an 11-man field. It's going to look a little bit spaced out and open to some big plays like that. But I think that this team, you already see an explosion in the pass game. Kemp Swords is already showing some of that dual threat skills. And this defense, an incredible defense in 8-man, it just wants to get after the ball. Caused a couple turnovers and some havoc in this game up in Gatlinburg. And I think this is a chance that they can use it to carry on into 11-man play. Yes, Evangel and 11-man this season. Get used to it. They'll end up playing 4 games in that format this season. It's why they're at Larry Simmons Stadium to start this out. And They're playing Abbeville Christian, a team that went 1-9 last year. Lots of struggles for them over in the AISA. I still think that Evangel has some room to grow. We still need to see a running back develop like Caleb Austin was for them last season. Obviously a huge guy for them. A lot more of the run game is going to fall on Kemp Swords as a result. And some other holes as well. Hayden Black not coming back. Zion Thompson as well, not coming back as well. But from what I saw in that opener against Aaron Del Perre, I have zero qualms picking Evangel in this one. And Cornerstone, we saw them throughout the season, just an absolutely dominant offense, one that was able to pick up that state championship, that first one for them in school history, and all but 2 seniors from that team are back. So this is going to be a team that has...
Let's go ahead and chalk it up at this point.
Exactly.
That's where we both are on that one.
They have so much continuity coming into this season, and that for them, we talk about continuity and building off of it. I read earlier this week that as a team, you're not guaranteed to start off from where you were when you ended last season. But this team, I really do think that they will be. I think this is a team that's really excited to open up the playbook for Zeke Adams, get a little bit more dynamic on the offense, show a bit more edge and aggression on defense, and just ultimately have a better year than last year, as crazy as that is to even think about. And I think that starts really here with this Lighthouse game. Lighthouse, already 0-1 on the year, got throttled by Tennessee Heat, 48-6 in their opening game, and they were the ACSC runners-up last year. So I think that Zeke Adams in this rushing attack ends up being too much. Look for this offense to show a little bit of its wings as this game goes on, and I think Cornerstone picks up one on the road ahead of coming back and starting region play next week.
Yep, check. I think same thing. Mirror that. I mean, it's going to be Evangel just reloads every year, every year. It's going to be the same story this year. They're going to have that talent. Can they win a state championship? Can they win a national championship? It's their big end of the season goal. Obviously, their rivalry that they've got as well. It's going to be fun to watch that team again this year, and they continue to plug and play. And they'll do that again this year. Cornerstone's got everybody back. State champions. I think they win it again. Right. I just don't see how they don't with how much talent they have returning this year to their team. I think they start 1-0. I think you're going to see Evangel move to 2-0 as we continue what's been strong play in both the AISA and the ACSC from the last couple of years. I think it's going to be a fun year to watch both of these teams, and then we'll see here in a couple of weeks what Coosa Valley is able to do as they look to get some of that same momentum and build off of it as well. So a big fun year ahead with our AISA and ACSC teams. That brings us to the end of the first show of the season, but not so fast, my friends. The famous Lee Corso quote there. We've got our bold predictions still left, and this is one of my favorite things that we did last year. We kind of started, we may start making a bold prediction for each week of the season moving forward, because I think it adds a little bit of fun to the show. But we're going to give you our bold predictions. First, I want to thank our sponsors again, 3D Air Services, Bertoloni's, Consign Design, and Scooters Coffee. Make sure you visit all of those places throughout the fall. But Andrew, we'll start with you. We'll get your big bold prediction for the year, mainly because mine I'm still thinking of as we talk right now. So maybe yours will give me a little bit of an idea where I'm going to go with this. But I'm excited to hear what you've got in store for us and what you think is going to be that big, bold statement going into the season that you hope holds up there at the end of the year here in about 11 weeks. My bold prediction, going back to Vincent from a couple segments ago, I believe this team is going to make the quarterfinals regardless of where they finish in this region. Now, that last part is important because this region is an absolute gauntlet like we talked about. Sologent and Tuscaloosa Academy both in the top 10 as well. Bunch of playoff teams from a season to go. I think that means, combined with the BB Comer game in non-region play, I think that's going to make this team battle-tested and really able to hold its own against a lot of these other teams in Class 2A. I just don't really see a way where some of these other teams are going to be really able to match up to this team just with the athleticism that they have. Even if they end up finishing towards the top of the region, Vincent maybe have to go on the road like they've had to throughout the past couple of seasons. I really do lean towards this Vincent team making a deep run into the playoffs. And I think even if they do it as a 3 seed, you can see them make a little bit of a noise and some upset on the road. Yeah, I mean, their schedule is just so tough. That's what hangs me up on Vincent. But if they make it through that schedule, if they finish in the top 2 of that region, this is a team that could win a 2A state championship with how difficult the region is. So, yeah, I have a lot of faith in Vincent with what they have returning. It's a matter of, can they make it through that difficult region?
Yeah.
If they do, watch out. I mean, that's a good prediction to have. I think that if they get to the playoffs, any team from this region can make a deep run at that point. So real quick, I got to ask you before we jump to me, any state champions this year from Shelby County?
Yes, and I'm not going to make the mistake that I did last year and say that state champion at the time.
Oh, no. Come on. Oh, man. Well, I'll go ahead and say that I think Thompson gets to the state championship game. I'm not going to say they win it this year. I think that that's a very high likelihood. I think they're motivated, and I think they probably are the favorite going into the season this year. You look at Auburn, you look at Central Phoenix City. Central Phoenix year was last year. They're going to have a lot of talent back this year, don't get me wrong, but that team last year was built for a state championship for several years. Auburn, going to be right there again. They're talented. That's going to be a fun group to watch. But Thompson, they've got the pieces defensively. They're loaded on that side of the football, and it's going to look a lot like a state championship defense. And they've got the best quarterback in the state this season as well. And when you've got those two things, you've got a team that should be able to win a state championship. So I think they at least get there. So no bold prediction there, because a bold prediction would be that they win it, and that's really not this bold at this day and age. I think that Spain Park, also not going to be a bold prediction. I think they get to the quarterfinals of the playoffs this year in Class 6A. It's such a difficult classification. Once you get further and further, you're taking on teams like Clay Chalkville and those big teams that have been competing for the state championship the last couple of years. It's going to be a challenging playoff run for them. But I think they win a region championship. That's somewhat bold. And I think they're also going to make it to the quarterfinals of the playoffs. But my bold prediction is that we see both the Shelby County Wildcats and the Montevallo Bulldogs from the same region make the playoffs this year. I think they will finish within that top four in this region. I think we're going to see them both into the postseason this year. So we'll see if that one holds up. You look at that region, I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to have a really good shot. Now it's just up to them to go out there and make the plays and prove me right at the end of the day. So a lot of fun as we come to a close here under no lights, and you may be thinking this was unintentional. I'm going to make it intentional and say that the lights are off tonight, but guess what? Thursday night, Friday night, these bad boys, they're going to be on. The Friday night lights return this Friday, and we have a special this week with the Thursday night lights as well, as Thompson going to play host to Grayson. So, Andrew, any closing thoughts as we head into this first week of the high school football season and a big, fun, exciting week ahead?
I'm ready. That's all I'll say.
All you got to say right there.
The time for talk is finally over, and after months of anticipation, it's finally here. We get to see how these teams battle it out on the field, and to me, that's always the most entertaining thing. Seeing these teams duke it out for glory, seeing all these fans line the stands and create the best atmospheres in the state. You can't beat Friday nights in Shelby County, and we're about to find out why come this Friday.
Yeah, you look across the county, this year may be the most unknown that we've seen. What can Spain Park do in their new classification? Can Chelsea, Helena, Pelham all get into the playoffs? Thompson win a state championship? Montevallo, Shelby County, Briarwood, Shelby County, or Montevallo and Briarwood in new classification. It's just so much fun and excitement leading into the season. As you can probably tell by the length of the show, we will try to shorten that up moving forward, but our excitement and what we had to talk about, we wanted to give you a good preview of each team. Andrew's done a lot of research with the football magazine that he had some good notes there. We want to make sure to give you everything that you could to know about the team for the season and also these week one matchups. And moving forward, we'll consolidate it a little bit, get you some quick hitters for each matchup each week and our stars of the week as well. So stay tuned for an exciting season. We're going to see you this Thursday night live from Thompson High School with our preview show. And then again, Friday night, Andrew will be one place, I'll be another place, and it's going to be a spectacular tailgate show to get you ready for the first Friday night of the high school football season. But until then, he's Andrew Simonson. I am Alec Etheridge signing off. We'll see you later this week.